Hello, my dears. Daniela here, and welcome to the Spa Marketing Made Easy podcast. So you've heard that saying, new level, new devil, right? So getting to 100K is different than getting to 500K is different than getting to 1 million. And for me, so much of what actually got me to those milestones was the personal development work that I was doing for myself. So I noticed that my own personal traumas were influencing how I would show up professionally. How did I trust? What patterns kept coming up for me? Until I knew what problem was the issue, it was just going to keep coming up over and over and over again, not only in my personal life, but also in my professional life, because truly it is all connected. So in that personal development journey, that was where I discovered breathwork, which for me, it felt like 20 years of therapy in one journey, in one session of breathwork. Now, breathwork has been, for me, just a really important part of my healing and my development, both personally and professionally. So I reached out to a friend of mine, Stefanos, who also happens to be half Greek, half Italian. And he is a total expert in this area, really in the whole personal transformation space, but he does a lot specifically with breath work and the feminine, which is absolutely incredible. You'll hear a little bit more about it in this episode. But I wanted to bring him in to really discuss what is breath work? How does it work? What is it doing? Why is it so powerful, right? It's just the way that we're breathing. And it's a really, really fun and interesting interview. So let me go ahead and read his bio, and then we will jump right in. With over 20 years of direct experience in the personal transformation space, Stefanos understands peak human potential. He's a trained educator and relationship expert with a background in behavioral science. He's passionate about leading people closer to their highest potential and each other. Stefanos' philosophy merges the best of Eastern and Western methodologies to promote spiritual balance and empower people in life and in love. From trauma release to navigating the murky waters of modern masculinity to helping women understand the men in their lives, he helps people escape negative patterns and cultivate a positive sense of self. Stefanos has also co-founded both a world-class coaching and education institute and a global men's empowerment movement, and has been involved in multiple 8- and 9-figure startups. Stefanos has worked with thousands of men and women from all walks of life: Special Forces soldiers, Olympic gold medalists, elite fighters, and everyday people have relied on him to restructure and reframe their relationships with themselves and their loved ones. He's a really incredible guy making a huge impact in the world. I hope you enjoy this interview and definitely find and follow Stefanos online. All right, Stefanos, welcome to the Spa Marketing Made Easy podcast. I'm really excited to have this conversation today to really open up this topic of breath work to our audience.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
So for me, the past, I would say 18 months or so has been a big shift in kind of exploring more about who I am as an individual and really looking at the personal development side of things. I've always been very numbers focused, spreadsheet focused, very data driven in the things that I was doing. And as I learned more about myself, I got more into the world of personal development. Some stuff was a little too far out for me, but I remember having this experience with breathwork, and I was at a retreat, and the woman that was leading the retreat, she said, okay, the first time that I went on a breathwork journey, I was there. I had this vision of myself as a little girl. There was this experience, this memory that I didn't even realize I remembered of these two little girls that didn't want her to play with them and how it had caused this trauma that she didn't even ever remember. And she was then like, yeah, then I visualized holding myself as a little girl and making myself feel better. And I'm sitting here thinking, what on earth am I doing? Where am I at? Like, this is a load of BS. Like, I was just so like, this is insane.
Skeptical.
skeptical, judgmental, all the things. And I caught myself and I said, okay, you are here to be open. You are here to not be in control. Like, let's just, because I have a control thing as many entrepreneurs, but I said, let's let that go and let's just experience, right? And I did. She had turned on the music. She was giving us some voice prompts and talking through some things. And within probably 30 seconds, I was a weeping, snotty mess.
It's quick. You're ready. It's quick.
It was pretty quick. And what happened for me, it really highlighted and uncovered these trauma memories that were specifically related to when I felt like I needed to take control. And it's not important what those specific memories are, but it was important for me to acknowledge and understand at this point when this trauma happened, that effect caused me to have trouble delegating things. That caused me to have trouble trusting others. And because I understood where that came from, it has allowed me to focus on it and understand my behaviors in such a deeper, better way. And so for me, I am like a breathwork convert. I don't know. I believe in the power of it so deeply. And this is something that's a big part of what you do and how you help others.
Yeah, it saved my life. I think literally saved my life.
Tell me.
Well, a number of years ago, I was in a very deep depression, and I was, I guess, logically looking at my life and saying, well, if I took the path of suicide, what would that look like for the world, for my friends and family, for me? Because I can't seem to get out of this thing that I'm in, and I'm really trying. And so I was just really deeply contemplating. I was in this phase of suicidal ideation, thinking about how I could do it, what it would look like, the impact that it would have, just really, really assessing it from what I thought was a logical place at the time. And a friend of mine said, hey, there's this traveling practitioner for breathwork. And at that time, I wasn't really familiar with breathwork. I understood various yogic practices and ancient mystical practices around breathwork, but the way that he was describing, I didn't really understand that. This almost transcendental experience that expanded consciousness and took you to places that were very unknown and mysterious within self, right? Yeah. And although I had some mystical experiences prior to that involved breath, this was foreign to me. And I hadn't given up at that point. I looked at him, I said, sure, just give me a number and do an intro and I'll try it, whatever. And that day just shifted my life. I mean, what came out of me and what moved through me and what realizations I had and what was actually released that was so stuck in me and so painful. And what I really realized then as I've been studying psychology and behavioral science and social psychology and trauma for many, many years. But what I viscerally understood then was that it was less about the experience and the event, although that plays a part in how we are affected by it. But it was more my interpretation of that event initially, and then what I made that event mean every time it came back into the periphery of my awareness. And that compounded the trauma, and it made me, like you said, I'll use my words though, repel, mistrust, not be present, be fearful of other people, not be engaged in love, not take risks, like all the things. And that day I released so much and moved through so much that I found a new direction in life. So I really think that session and that woman who facilitated that session, the interesting thing is, I've completely forgotten her name. I can see her face, but there's only one session that we did as well. It's like she disappeared after that. I don't know.
She changed your life. She saved your life. In a sense, she helped, she got you on the right path. So interesting, the impact that we have on others.
Without even knowing it.
Without even knowing it. Yeah. Here you are so many years later talking about her on a podcast. So breathwork, tell me a little bit about what it is, the kind of concepts behind it, because you have this incredible story. I have this, I felt like I went through 20 years of therapy.
Yeah. That's honestly what happens. But that's the power of somatic work. That's the power of getting into our bodies, because we paradoxically do everything we can to get out of our bodies. Because when we experience trauma or we experience an intense event, generally what happens is our bodies and our minds shut down, but we still store the experience of the event at a cellular level in our body. So it doesn't escape us until we actively close the loop on that trauma. Otherwise, the loops are open and they keep playing out in order to try and have a redo so you can be differently with the experience or the event, so you can close the loop on trauma and move on. In the wild, if an animal is being chased or hunted and that animal gets away by another predator, another predatory animal, that animal will go somewhere once it's complete in its safety and shake and release the adrenaline and the cortisol and whatever other stress hormones are released through that, or whatever's activated through the sympathetic nervous system in those times. And then it goes about its day. That's it. That's the simplicity of it. We don't do that as humans. We store, we suppress, we repress. We deal with it by psychologically avoiding and numbing, or numbing comes later, but we avoid the big thing. We disassociate. We check out mentally, but that stuff is still being absorbed by our bodies. Now, when we walk around and move around, our enteric system is absorbing information from its environment, sending signals via the vagus nerve into the brain and informing us of what's happening in our world. Are we safe? Are we not safe? Do we feel okay to be with this person? Can we open up a little more? Does this person remind me of something? This is all unconscious, right? That is dangerous or not fit for me. And so we're constantly assessing. The more trauma you have, particularly trauma that's stored and unresolved, the higher your vigilance is. So the greater your threat funnel. So you're constantly operating at this high stress, super vigilant, doesn't trust anybody, can't trust anybody, doesn't see self through a healthy lens, low self-worth, compensation all the time to feel better. That could look like, let me increase my status, let me have more money in my bank account, let me drive nice cars, let me look a particular way, or to compensate for that feeling of inadequacy or that feeling of fear and pain, the thing that we're avoiding the most. So I'll pause there and I'll definitely share how particular breath techniques are impacting us physiologically, and how and why those unconscious, unprocessed, unresolved thoughts, memories, feelings, emotions, how they come to us with greater awareness. But I'll pause there for a moment.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you were sharing about that in the body, I've shared this on the podcast before, but I lost my dad to malpractice. And there is an experience where I got home before he died. I heard the ambulances coming. And, I opened the door, I walked in, I saw the whole thing, everything that, was happening in the moment. And this was, 21 years ago, right? Or even more than that. I was 17. And maybe 2 years ago, I was playing in the driveway with my son, and there were these ambulances that came on the street, and my whole body went into like a panic. Like my heart was racing, there was a physical reaction that I was having that from the ambulance. And I remember telling my husband, like, I must have some unresolved stuff going on here, because that really brought it up. But it just brought that so much of how we store that in our bodies to actually have a physical reaction, because I felt processed. I felt like, okay, this has been this many years. I've accepted, I've looked at this and grown into the place where I can see it as a gift of going through the pain, because that gave me growth and awareness in a different level. And I of course want my dad back. I see that when I, with my children now that they don't have their papu, but there's the body, the physical thing that happened that was so eye-opening for me, that really shows like those things get stored in your body in a whole different way.
They're associative symbols, and they're precursors to preparation, essentially. And you may very well have resolved that grief within you. But because that experience was so intense, I would gather, walking into the unknown and seeing that with a loved one, and I'm sorry for your loss as well, that's really big. And that imprints on us at every level, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, physically. And so that ambulance, you hearing that ambulance is reminding you that you need to brace, And so that's that, right? In those moments, again, it doesn't mean that you have more grief. I mean, you may, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. What it does mean is that in those moments, you can remind yourself that you are safe and that you needn't have to brace. It's also habit too, again, the intensity and the imprint, right? But then you've got chronic patterns of behavior as well. Like, for example, for years, so my brother was a drug addict for a long time. And he's been clean now for many, many years, right? But for a long time, I would be receiving phone calls either from my mother or police or hospital or whatever it may be. And every time I'd get my mum's phone number or an unknown number, I'd brace, and for years after, even though my brother stopped that behavior and we became a lot closer as well, which is really beautiful. He's my best friend now. We're so close. Not so much now, but years later, I would still get that sometimes, and that sometimes is that habitual patterning that we're exposed to, and it's there to prepare us. But in those moments, again, working with those parts of us that feel really scared or feel shocked or are hypervigilant, and regulating our nervous system really undoes that pattern. Is that a word? Undoes? Yeah, undoes that pattern.
It works.
It works, yeah. Unravels that pattern is probably a better term, yeah.
And to tie this into entrepreneurship, I really believe, being a spa owner, when you get into hiring a team and you get into dealing with customer issues or whatever it may be, I mean, going through just the journey of entrepreneurship is the greatest lesson in personal development apart from having children, I believe. You're constantly having to deal with this fire, that fire, this personality, or how am I going to work this? How am I going to grow into having the capacity to lead this company to the way that I want? And I feel like when we have those things, that everybody has trauma at some point, everybody has things that make them brace. When those are not resolved, we bring those into the workplace. We bring those into
our lives.
In every aspect. And an action from somebody else can mean something completely different than it was intended when we're looking at our own stories. So it's so important to do the work on yourself and really understand, what are my triggers? What are the things that I may have biases about or anything like that, to be able to lead your team or have those tough conversations that you need to have, or even just have the confidence in yourself that you're able to build this company. You have the capacity to build this company. It's so important. These two things go hand in hand in such a big way. It's not, I was talking with you earlier, like this morning we had doctors and laser reps and this very like corporate medical types of episodes. And now we're talking about breath work, and it's like, all right, it's the business in the morning and the woo in the afternoon. But really they are so intertwined and so necessary with one another for, I don't know if the word is holistic success or complete success, or really like balanced success and getting to the place that you want.
Yeah, sure. I mean, when as an entrepreneur, hiring or having multiple personalities, and I don't mean that from a personality disorder perspective, I mean, having multiple people with multiple histories and multiple ways of seeing the world, right? Different vantage points. They see the world through different lenses. It is wise to ensure that we're asking the right questions. And even as an entrepreneur, that where you're hiring people, providing this is what I do in my business. So one of my businesses now that I recently launched, even though I'm a coach in this space, I have specific individuals that support our team on a personal and professional level. And they have access to that person, almost like a in-house psychologist, if you like, or a pair of psychologists, because I understand the value of optimizing team and optimizing efficiency, but more importantly, that people are human with human problems, and they have stuff that they can't see because we often can't see the forest through the trees because we're in the thing. And so having support with that is really important for conflict management, for, internal repair. If one of our employees or one of our contractors is having issues at home, in a familial sense, like, can we support them through that?
Yes.
And I see the value and importance in that, and investing in that now means that there are less issues later. There's more operational efficiency. There's greater individual and collective happiness within the workplace, within our ecosystem. And that impacts all of our clients and impacts all of our stakeholders. And they sense that and they see that, and they see that as a USP as well. They see that as a point of difference in the marketplace, because we not only do that for our internal team, we do that for our community as well, where we provide monthly sessions where people can just come and be coached live and be taken through a process live and work through their issues. And there's deep healing in being witnessed by a group of like-minded and like-hearted people that are non-judgmental and compassionate. And we set the scene, we context set a great deal, just like I context set for breathwork. I will sometimes spend nearly an hour context setting for breathwork and really expressing and helping people explore and understand, even if they've done it before, even if they have exposure to it, all the nuances of breathwork and the spectrum of the experience that you may or may not have, to help people feel really, really safe. So if I jump back to breathwork for a moment, the reason why I do that is because, like a plant medicine journey or a sacred sacrament journey or anesthetic, right, whatever it may be, or laughing gas, which may be a little more familiar to your clientele, right? Because you may use that in your practice. I'm not sure. I know dentists use it, obviously, and other medical professions as well. But once you have that, you are at the helm of that substance that you've taken. Mm-hmm. If you have too much marijuana or too much LSD or too much cocaine or too much anything, that external substance, or ayahuasca, whatever it may be, you don't even have to have too much of that, but that external substance has you. You can't think your way through that. Mm-hmm. You're not going to go and drive and pretend you're straight and you're not intoxicated, or you're not under an influence, or your consciousness hasn't left the familiar state of being into an unfamiliar place. You can't control that. Now, the interesting thing with breathwork, as I'm sure you can attest to, is you can go to some really interesting places within your own psyche that are akin and very similar to plant medicine journeys or being under the influence of something.
It's so interesting because, I have in this world of personal development, there's a lot of people that are plant medicine and all that kind of stuff. And that's not really my path. It's not something that I've felt called to or interested in experiencing. And with breath work, I did feel like something physically happened. And it was such an experience, and it was such a, I was like ugly, snotty crying.
Yeah.
And it was out of my control. And it felt like the way that people describe when they go on these plant journeys or whatever that plant medicine.
Here's the thing though with breathwork, you were out of control. But the moment you changed your breath technique, if you chose to, within seconds to minutes, you would be in a regulated state, in a familiar state of consciousness. That's the difference.
That's so crazy.
That's the difference. So here's what that does. And by the way, I'm an advocate of plant medicine. I am a genuine advocate of appropriate use in appropriate conditions. I also have criticisms of how plant medicine is used by the masses and the Western world in today's world, which is probably a topic for another time. And I don't have to be opinionated about that here, but I'm just being very clear on where I stand on that.
No, it's fine. I think it's a personal choice.
Yeah. For sure. Absolutely. And why I am an advocate of breath work, as I'm an advocate of plant medicine for different circumstances, but with breath work, a couple of things. Firstly, so many people that have experienced trauma, what's part of that trauma is being out of control, or their power taken from them, or them losing their power. And so plant medicines, because they can be a little extreme and very quick, and you lose that control and that power very quickly, it can reactivate trauma. Mm. Now, breathwork can somewhat do the same thing. However, and I context that a lot. However, you know that you're in control, because all you've got to do is change your breath. Now, you may think, well, what if I go too far? That can happen. But you can come back a lot easier, and I can support people. I support people in coming back because I have a skill set in being able to do that. The other thing is when people know that they're in control, paradoxically, they'll move a little deeper into the exploration of the unknown within themselves. Mm-hmm. So the intensity can be deepened, heightened, more expanded if you like, and therefore the result can be more powerful. Because it's like there's this safety net there. It's like, oh, all I've got to do is change my breath if I go too deep. Cool. You know what? fuck it, I'm going to go deep.
Yeah.
And they go there. Whereas sometimes people won't do that when they know that they'll be out of control for too long. It's too scary.
That's interesting because I don't even like being drunk. Like it is a sense of control. Like I'll have 2 glasses of wine max, but anything that's going to make me feel like I can't control my actions, I don't like the way that feels.
Most people don't.
Yeah. All right. So talk to me a little bit more about breath work in particular, of kind of what's happening, what's the experience is, and then I want to know about these events that you host.
Sure, of course. Yeah, thank you. So I'll try and just really simplify it, because there's a lot that I believe Western medicine doesn't know and we don't understand. And then there is a lot that we do that we can just very simply explain it, so to speak. So there are different techniques for breath work, obviously. When we say breath work, it encompasses I guess a narrow range, well, depends who you're speaking to. It encompasses a range of different practices and techniques. The ones that we are referring to here is more of a holotropic style of breath work, or a Wim Hof style of breath work, either through the nasal passage or through the mouth, generally through the mouth. They're quite rapid, hyperventilative style movements of breath. Like,
yeah, I think I had to do like through like 80%
belly,
the
chest,
belly, the chest. Yeah.
Cool. And then the cyclical breath, and you can have an active inhale or an active, you can have an active inhale and or an active or passive exhale. You can do a double barrel chambered inhale. So there's so many different techniques, right? But essentially that style of breathing will elicit generally a very particular response in the body. So what's happening is that style of breathing, and then I involve a number of different elements that I've pulled from different modalities and methodologies that lend itself to the quality of the experience and possibly the intensity of the experience. And I'll cover those elements in a moment as well. But that breath technique, it activates a part of your brain, the hippocampus, the part of the hippocampus that is responsible for unconscious thought, unconscious memories, unconscious feelings, emotions, and it can bring them to the surface of conscious awareness. Mm-hmm. And it's that, and I think
that's how those memories come back that you...
Correct.
Yeah.
That's right, that you've suppressed. And so you have an opportunity to be with them in a different way than you were. And part of that is I'll say this pretty absolute, we all want freedom. Mm-hmm. However we define freedom, we all want freedom. But the true path to freedom is feeling what has been unfelt. That's an integral part of the process. So we have to feel what wasn't felt at the time of that intense experience that we had, that we interpreted as bad or negative or hurtful or harmful or painful or whatever.
Which you might have been in shock at that point.
Correct. Absolutely. And you didn't have an opportunity, because you were in freeze, you didn't have an opportunity to express and feel, and maybe it wasn't even appropriate to do so because you had to survive in that moment. Mm-hmm. But that feeling being expressed is more than just a feeling. It's a release, and it's a closing of that physiological trauma loop. Because now what happens from that point, if we allow it, we just get activated and activated and activated, and the norm for us internally becomes a sympathetic activated nervous system, as opposed to a balance of parasympathetic and sympathetic, more so parasympathetic, right? Because we only really need, there's some truth to this, so I'll say it anyway. The sympathetic nervous system plays a role in our lives, but it's there to protect us. But when we're hypervigilant, it's just constantly activated. Mm-hmm. So when this breath technique activates and pushes on this area of the brain, and we have these emotions that come through, and we have an associative emotion that comes with that, like sadness, grief, anger, screaming, whatever visceral, like we want to animate the body. We want to animate the body without judgment, without even questioning, just follow the feeling. You just want to follow. So if you want to clench your fist, clench your fist. If you want to scream, scream. If tears are coming, let them come. Like allow the cycles of expression to complete. And then once they complete, they're pretty much done. Now, there could be layers to that. And sure, you don't just brush your teeth once a day or shower once a day or whatever. You repeatedly do that in order to maintain. And so you may have multiple sessions or multiple experiences of this, but once that particular cycle is complete, it's complete, right? So that's an important part of the breath work. Some of the elements, an important part of understanding what's happening in your body. Some of the elements that I use to activate and I guess intensify the experience, or set the experience up, set the environment up in such a way that individual can really, really just go there and grow. Loud music, as you mentioned earlier.
That was crucial for me.
Yeah, and for most. And sometimes it can be very frustrating and even annoying for people. Good. Be in the annoyance, because that's moving energy. That's doing something, that's shaking.
It also made me feel safe.
Can do, yeah.
Because I felt like whatever experience I was going to have, I could cry, I could whatever, and not everyone's going to look at me.
Correct, that's right. Yeah, and that's another part of it too, right? Eye masks are great because we want to internalize our experience and block out the senses. Remember, our eyes are our greatest threat funnel, right? And how we perceive the world around us. So that's another element as well. Having practitioners and support staff that will, for lack of a better term, administer or provide gentle touch, support, if people want it. I'm always checking in a private way. If anyone does not want any touch during their session, then that's fine, no problem at all. And some people will raise their hands, and most won't. Most want to know that someone's there caring for them if they're in a very deep experience. But if you don't want to, that's completely okay. It's, you're an autonomous, sovereign being, right? So there's that element of that gentle touch as well. And then there's two guidelines that I use is keep breathing, because this technique can also make you fall asleep. The gaseous levels in your body are changing pretty rapidly. Nitrogen, carbon dioxide, oxygen. You can also experience cramping, a carpopedal response in your extremities. Yeah, that's very normal and common for most people. That passes, but it can be very intense. You may fall asleep. That's all part of the process. So just keep coming back to the breath. And then, again, another element. I'll finish this duo first. Keep coming back to the breath and follow the feeling without judgment. So if, again, tears are there, to cry. Don't, why am I crying? Where's this happening? Where's it coming from? I feel okay. Why am I... Tears are there, cry.
I feel like when you are given this direction of, 80% belly, 20% chest, it keeps you present also. Correct. Because you have to keep concentrating on, am I doing the breath? Yeah. Am I engaged? Yeah. And again, the last, I guess, one of the last parts to that, one of the last elements is I'm very, not overly, I don't think, but I'm vocal during the session. So over the music, I will guide and I will support and provide visualization and I'll feel and read the room in that and provide guidance in that. And so I'll remind people to come back to their breath, and I'll remind people that they're safe in their bodies. And, there's so many times where, and there are some modalities and schools of thought that say don't have any interaction, don't provide any intervention with that person having their experience, right? At all. Zero. Sometimes that's useful. I'm not opposed to that, but I'm also an advocate for, we're relational beings. So I'm an advocate for, someone, a support person coming in and supporting that person. And sometimes they'll be on the verge of expression. You just hold their feet or put a hand on their chest and for me, the guidance was essential. Yeah. And I was in the moment, I was staying present, and she was asking questions. What do you need to let go of? And it was almost like she was talking to my subconscious, having that, it was guided questions like that, reminding us to stay present, reminding us of the breath, and then talking through these different things. And there was all these memories that came up that I don't know. I mean, I have one experience with this, but I don't know if I would have had those particular memories come up if I were just focusing, because I would be thinking, am I doing this right? Am I staying present? Having that voice, that guidance was incredibly helpful for me. It really can be. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's another interesting point around group work or single work when it comes to breath work. Both are equally as powerful in different ways. And it just depends where you are in your life. And I recommend doing both. Mm-hmm. So tell me about these events. Do you host these with your wife, or is this just you? Yeah, I do. Just of late, she hasn't been able to come just because of our little one, the timings of it. But yeah, generally, yes. But I've been doing it, monthly, right? Every month, yep. Every month. So they're live in Austin.
in Texas, and they're live streamed as well and recorded. So everyone gets a recording, whether you're there in person or you're there virtually, and you keep that recording for forever, basically. And it's a 3-hour immersive, and it's a combination of a number of different elements. Breathwork is one component, so we don't just breathe for 3 hours. There's live coaching, there's other essential practices. Usually every month carries a theme. As we're talking now, this month's theme is dating and relationships. Next month's theme in April is going to be more around intimacy and sexuality. And so every we've done grief. December was grief. Just last December passed. Let's sort of whatever you've experienced in 2022, what do you want to let go of? Let's grieve that and actually move through that. So there are very specific practices that we get into that prime us for the breath work. There's a combination of somatic work, additional somatic work, I should say, inner child work, reflective work, group work, triad work, connection, relational work as well. And then we move into breath work and we recover, we integrate, and then we do live coaching as well and sharing too. So that's a big part of it.
How does that work with the virtual component? Have you had feedback that, because I imagine you're just in your house. Do you still have like the loud music? Like if you turn the volume up on your computer or?
Yeah, for sure. So look, there's benefits in both, right? And being in the comfort and the safety of your own home can be really healing for some people, and it's exactly what they need. And it's easy. It's like ease of access as well, right? It's pretty easy to set up. The live streaming that we do, the audio and the visual is really high quality, particularly the audio. So they hear it very clearly. No issues there, right? It's not like just a sort of, it's just a proper live stream setup. And with that, as long as they're, whatever you at home are using, whatever system you're using, you can run your system through a Bluetooth speaker as well, right? Whatever system you're using, you can have the music on pretty loud. Yeah. Okay,
that's interesting. So you have these every single month, live streams. So anybody in the country,
anybody in the world, Yeah. And they're recorded if you can't make it because it's too late or too early for you.
That seems like a really safe place to try something like this.
Very much so.
And test something out.
And it's super cost effective. And I'll share this with you now as well. Moving forward, I've decided to make, especially the virtual one, 100% the virtual one, pay as you can.
Really?
Yep.
How beautiful. That will impact people on such a big way.
Yeah. There'll be a minimum, but it's a nominal amount. Yeah. It won't be a fixed price anymore. We just pay what you want, basically. You want to pay $100, pay $100. You want to pay $10, pay $10.
That's great. So I know we're going to get all the links from you and have that all set up. So we'll make sure to include that below. I want to encourage everybody to check that out and try it out, test it out, explore for yourself. I mean, it was such a powerful thing for me to just understand, like, wow, there's so much still in there. We are constant works in progress and really, getting to that next level and pushing yourself to constantly be the best version of yourself requires sometimes looking at parts of yourself that you don't want to see and
Truth.
Accepting yourself and loving yourself for that.
Yeah. Agreed.
Anything else you want to add to make this episode complete for you?
Breathwork can be really scary and it can be confronting and there's a lot of unknown and it can be perceived as woo-woo, but the reality is that, we're 2 or 3 minutes away from death, so to speak. I mean, that's the power of breath, right? So I think it pays to really connect to our breath in meaningful ways, in different ways, in all the ways, not just this kind of breath work, but also maybe more passive, gentle breath work. Being more aware of the manner in which we breathe can be deeply healing as well. Are you a mouth breather? Are you a nasal breather? Because ideally we're meant to breathe through our noses. There are so many great resources out there on breathing, and all of these resources that are modern today, they have come from very ancient practices. And so if you're anything like me, you like to go straight to the source. I like to go straight to the source. And I really enjoy some of the modern authors and experts on breathing and breathing patterns and breathing physiology and breathing for expanding consciousness and improving relationships and emotional well-being and emotional health as well. And as I said, it can be really scary find a practitioner, find someone that you can work with, someone that you can trust, and allow them to help you journey into breathwork. And it can be deeply revealing and life-changing for you. Like I said, for me, it really saved my life. And for you, it sounds like it really helped you turn in a very new direction.
It did. And it shifted so many, it was like this awakening, in a sense, to see myself in a different way, to understand myself. It has been tremendous in my relationship with my husband. I feel like we're in the best place that we've been in years.
Amazing.
And that was a trigger for it. And also in my company, like understanding how to lead my team in a different way, I just feel more aware, and it touches every aspect of your life.
Have you ever had anyone come in and take your team and yourself through a collective breathwork session?
No.
Good idea.
I will reach out to you about that.
More than welcome to. If not, I can recommend, where are you again?
I'm in DC, but my team we're virtual.
Oh, virtual. Easy then.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, we're all virtual. So.
I like that.
Very good. Well, tell our listeners where they can find you, follow you, get in touch with you, all the good things.
Thank you. So my main website, stefanosifandos.com. Breathwork for the Feminine, stefanosifandos.com/feminine. And on social media, @Stefanos Sifandos.
Very good. Thank you so much. I appreciate your expertise and for being here. It's been a wonderful, wonderful conversation.
Appreciate you.
Thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.